Greetings, everyone. I see some people saying salama, samba salama family, from Ace and Mother Bantu. Welcome, salama, shalom, selomi. Welcome to you all. Peace and blessings to everyone. And we praise the Most High Yah for making it possible for us to be here. Now, if you can hear me just fine, and you can see both Brother Ron and myself, go ahead and type one in the chat. Type one in the chat if you can hear me and you can see myself and Brother Ron. Okay. Okay. All right. I see two people. Okay. Shalom, everyone. Shalom, welcome. Selomi is what I say in my Efe language. Shalom, salama. Okay. Very good. Yes. Awesome. And okay, blessings from Nigeria. Yeah, welcome, Sister Oniyechi. And Monica. Oh, hi, sis. Welcome. Debbie, Ace, Cyclone, Shalom, Mariama, Davi Fafa, also known as Salima Peace. Yes. And Simply Save, that's Brother Rodney Jones, who recently published his first books called Hebrews, Africans, or Does It Matter? He's also in the audience. Welcome. Seshi, Dafriel. Okay. DJ Peter. Grounded Roots. Huey Freeman. Welcome. Peace. Welcome to everyone. Let's give a few more minutes for our brothers and sisters to join us. We are live. Both on YouTube, and we are also live on Facebook. So please go ahead and thumbs up so that we can get the algorithm to know that we are here for peace and that you actually like what you're seeing and about to hear. Thumbs up and share the video, share the live. I'm going to check on our Facebook crowd. Yes. Brother Ron is here. The famous Brother Ron Dalton Jr. is here on Hebrew Ivri Ewe Ewe, the Black Man. Yes, we praise Yah. Okay. All right. Someone says Ago. Okay, that's that Ajo. Yes, Ago to you too. Okay, Brother Kojo, window. Welcome. Okay. Tadaidem, welcome. And DJ says, so is it just me, or has anyone else recognized that our African Israelite groups are not uniting enough? Huh. You have said it all, my brother. You have said it all. That is the key. We are not uniting enough, and that is to our detriment. Hello, sister, and everyone here. Shalom. Selomi, salama. Welcome. We are live on YouTube and on Facebook. So please go ahead and share the live. All right. We're 10 minutes into it. Everyone, miawezo. Yo, hawezo. Welcome, everyone. Okay. So I think we will get started here. Yeah. All right. All right, brother Ron. So how is where you are in South Africa now, right? Oh, you are muted.
Yeah, I'm in South Africa right now. Yeah,
Okay, and how is it over there?
it's cold today, but it's good. It's cold, a little cold today, but it's good. It's cheap compared to America, and it's more black people, so it's less racism.
Yeah. Maya posted some video of snow. It's snow like it's snowing heavily in some part of South Africa. Is that
Yeah,
true?
it has to be Cape Town because Durban is like 59 degrees today, so I don't know how it could snow
Mm,
if it's 59 degrees outside in Durban. Maybe Cape Town. Maybe Cape Town.
oh,
I don't
okay.
know. There's no snow here, but it is it is like in the 40s here. At least today
Mm-hmm.
it was. I don't know why, but it's colder.
Now, is that abnormal or does it happen like this every year?
No, I mean, because right now it's technically spring and it's not winter right now, so it's
Yeah.
kind of abnormal. Hmm.
That's very interesting. Very interesting because we always hear of how the weather is being manipulated. And I lived in Florida for 10 years and I can tell you, hmm it's definitely is manipulated. you know.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, that's a topic for another day. So uh let's get to know you better. I deal on the ever Hebraic history, culture, and linguistics, and I want my ever speaking people to get to know you. So tell us, who is the man Ron Dalton Jr.?
Um. Well, many people know me as the guy that wrote the book Hebrews to Negroes Wake Up Black America, and the producer of the movie with the same title. That I guess it got a lot of notoriety and attention when Kyrie Irving, the NBA basketball player for the Brooklyn Nets, posted the Amazon link to the movie in 2022. But prior to that, I was still, you know, doing my thing in the Israelite community, um, you know, amongst all the other Israelites that are teaching that we're the Israelites, but they may not be um, talking about Africa and the 12 tribes and the connections between people in Sub-Saharan Africa to the Israelites. I think that, prior to the Kyrie incident, myself and maybe Only Love, and I'm trying to think if there's anybody else. So not too many people were really stressing and pointing out the connections that we had to the Israelites by tracing back our ancestry and lineage to Africa and the different people um, that were affected during the slave trades in different parts of West Africa and Central Africa, and even if do the research, you'll see that in East Africa and some in South Africa that you have a lot of people too that are also connected to the Israelites. And this is one of the things that I like to study, but in particular, the DNA part really kind of opened my eyes to know that it's not just this particular group of people like the Igbos. It's not, the Lemba Jews and the Igbos only that are have Israelite ancestry. When you look at the genetics and the DNA studies, you will find out that we all have something in common on the mother side and the father side, especially on the father side, and that this connects us paternally to the same ancestral forefather, Jacob. In English, his name is Jacob. So, other than that, I'm a family man. I'm a husband, a father of a lot of children, and by uh, career profession. I'm a physician assistant. In America, they work alongside with doctors and sometimes with also nurse practitioners in the hospital field, in the clinics, and nursing homes, the group homes, individual home visits. The psych ward. I mean, we're like long time, forever residents. I mean, I would say like residents basically. But yeah, so I did that. Been doing that since 2004 in Detroit, and my dad's a pastor, and I just woke up around the year 2010. 10, yeah, around 2010. I just wanted to know why we were a destroyed people, an oppressed people in America, in the Caribbean, in Africa, in India, and I wanted answers, and I want to know who we were according to the Bible, and none of the pastors and my dad and whoever couldn't answer that question. And I would tell them like, look, listen, I said we have all these Egyptian stuff in our houses, and we see all these Egyptian King Tut. Does that mean we are Egyptians? And they didn't have no answers. And I said, well, you keep saying we're Gentiles in the New Testament when you preach Paul, Jew or Greek and Gentile. I said, but there's no man in the Bible named Gentile. So where do we come from? Noah didn't have a son named Gentile. Noah didn't have a son named African. And Noah didn't have a son named Nigerian. So who are we in the Bible? Are we Ham, Shem, Japhet? And none of the pastors could answer this question. And I thought that this was important because we're reading the Bible about the Perizzites and the Hittites and the Amorites and the Jebusites and the Israelites and the Edomites and the Ishmaelites and the daughters of sons of Keturah. And I'm like, well, like all these different nationalities in the Bible confuses black people when you read it. Assyrians, Babylonians, Elamites, all these different things, Meshach, Tubal, Gomer, Magog, Togarmah. And you're wondering, like, what does this got to do with me? And so it almost seems like you're reading a fable, like a fantasy book, like some kind of fictional book, because you cannot connect yourself to the book, but it's the Bible, and you believe in Christ and in Christianity in the New Testament and salvation, but you don't understand the Bible. And a lot of Africans that are here in South Africa, they always say that they have a tough time reading the Bible because they don't know how it connects to them, although they've been colonized and Christianized. So this was something that I wanted to know. Who are we, our identity, and how it ties into everything, and can actually uh, save us from a lot of harm's way that's coming in the future.
Yes, yes. And when you brought these your questions to the pastors and the elders in the church, how did they treat you?
Um, they said, this is not the right time, not right now. You're disrupting the service. There's too many questions. You'll deal with it later. It's not important. We don't need to know that. It's not about skin color. Christ loves everybody. It's not about race. Race is not going to save you. All the typical stuff. Neither Jew nor Greek. And so that was the way they will shut you down on asking these questions about who are we in the Bible. Even if you ask a pastor, who are the Canaanites? Who are they? Who are they today in in the world that we live in? They didn't have no answer. He said, who are the Syrians and Babylonians today? Where are they at? They didn't have no answer. Who are the Edomites? If these are the Jews, then who are the Edomites? Jacob's brother. They have descendants too, don't they? Where are they at? They had no answer. So they just told you, basically, don't worry about these things that are in the Old Testament. Let's just focus on Christ and getting you saved and baptized. Stop asking questions about who you are. Let's just get you baptized and do you want the Holy Spirit? Are you gonna make it into the kingdom? Is your soul secure when you die? So these are the typical things that they would tell us, and most black Christians would just obey that and say, okay, thanks, Pastor, and that's it.
Yeah, that is true. I can definitely attest to that. Um, yeah, and it sounds like, they just don't want to invest the time and effort into looking into what you're presenting. They just want to continue in what it is that they were doing before.
Hmm. Yep. It's all right.
All
It's
right.
tradition over truth. Tradition over truth.
Exactly.
That's what
Tradition.
it
That is so true. Tradition over truth. That's right. I'm gonna use that. Tradition over truth. All right.
is.
So, while you were speaking, there were some comments about the Kyrie incident. It says, Salima Peace Joy Fafa says, the reaction to the Kyrie incident is what really woke me up. I brought all, it says, I bought all of Brother Ron's books. And a lot of people, you know, um, have that, that happened to a lot of people, including myself. I had your first book, but with the Kyrie incident, I went and ordered the rest of them. Just to be safe, because you never know.
And the crazy thing is,
And
you already knew me. You already knew me from Clubhouse and the other things we were doing.
yeah,
So you already knew me already.
I knew. I already knew you. I already knew what you had to share. I already knew your message, but I needed to have the books, because the books I can at least, show people. Well, it says it here. Ron Dalton researched it and found it, and wrote about it here. And Fokofi is here. Fokofi, welcome. Wisdom. Shalom, Selomi, Salama, whichever one floats your boat. Welcome. All right.
Hmm.
Okay. Um, and then Tim says, Ron, I own the whole Hebrews to Negroes book series and have watched your documentaries. Because he has
Yeah,
like what, 4 or 5 of them now, or
it's actually
six?
like 7 or 8 now.
The 7 or 8. Okay. Yeah. And you have all of them on H2N TV?
Yeah, except for the first one. The first one I had the one that Kyrie got in trouble. I had that on H2N TV, and I think a lot of Jews started complaining, and they were sending in complaints, and then it
Mhm.
got to the trust and safety team, and the trust and safety team, they have that with GoFundMe, they have that with Indiegogo, they have that with Kickstarter. They have a community guidelines trust and safety team with just about any entity in America, even Apple, even Roku, even Amazon Fire, even iOS, even Android. They all have their own community guidelines, their trust and safety team, and if enough people complain, they will investigate it. And if the Jews are offended, and they say we were offended and all this other stuff because of religion and race, then they they have the power to take these things down, because you got to remember that there's agreements and contracts in place with almost everything we do in Hollywood, in the movies, in
Mhm.
streaming, even the apps that we stream on TV. You stream it on somebody's app, and these apps have guidelines, and you have to
Yeah.
follow these guidelines. You Google, Yahoo, they all got guidelines. So the Jews, I guess they contacted whoever, and they took it down. So I said whatever, but I still have a way that you can see it if you're not in America. If you're in Africa and you want to see the first movie, they can email me and I can send them the link and show them how to get it, because H2NTV.com is available worldwide. It's not restricted to any country like Amazon and Netflix has certain content that they don't allow in Africa.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm gonna share it. I'm gonna share it here. Let's see here. H2N TV. I am a subscriber. I've been for quite a number of years now. And you have some of my videos on H2N TV, which I really appreciate. It makes me feel so special. But I know that it is your hunger and thirst to get the word out to all of our brothers and sisters everywhere that we may be in the world. So this is
Yeah,
H2N TV.
we have to have a platform where you can get teaching from Eve, Abagusi, Kikuyu, Igbo, Ashanti, whatever, because Kikongo, Bakongo. So you have to be, we shouldn't have to not know who's teaching on what because we don't know their channel. There's actually people
Mhm.
that are Kosa and Basotho and Zulu and from other tribes that can break down and teach a lot of the Hebrew traditions and customs in their tribe in Africa, whatever country they're from. But we don't know about these teachings because unless we know their YouTube channel, we won't ever see these kind of things. And so I like to tell the people that I do know, like you, Siriam, and others, that hey, put it on H2N TV because there's some people from America, the Caribbean, and Africa that are going to come and they'll see the connection. They'll see it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm just showing my stuff that's on there. That's awesome. And I see you have Minister Only Love on here as well, and her trips to Africa, to Nigeria as
Mm-hmm.
well. And yeah, and about her book, Prophetic Whirlwind,
Yeah.
Uncovering the Black Biblical Destiny.
Yep.
That's awesome. And you have so many other Hebraic authors and
Yeah.
video makers on here as well as your own stuff. And I know this guy. I've seen him. Okay, Cameron. Yeah. Okay.
Jay Cameron.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. That's great. Okay. So let's get back into. All right. Let's see some of the comments going just so that we can keep up with them. Uh, let's see. I know there were a lot of comments about the Kyrie incident. People were talking about how that has propelled them, ushered them into the awakening, and others, quickly got your books and all that. So that's
Well,
cool. And
The
then,
Kyrie incident, it showed us a couple of things. One, that there are people that do not want us or America to get this to see this movie, and they made it very clear that they don't want you to see this movie or get the book because they of the claims that they say. And
right.
we have to understand that we are all adults and it's lawful and legal in America to see the movie. It's on Amazon. It's still on Amazon. They're making money from it. They
Mhm.
haven't taken it down. The books, everything's still on Amazon. But yet they want to tell us adults, no, you can't watch the movie. You can't look at it and decide for yourself if it's truthful, if it's not, if it's offensive, if it's not. Because at the end of the day, we have all types of nationalities and ethnic groups that would want to see it and let them decide if it's hurtful or offensive to them. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of stuff that I see that's offensive and hurtful to Black people. But we see these things never get taken down. People never get reprimanded. They never get punished. They never get suspended. They never get asked to do all this
Mhm.
stuff that Kyrie had to do. And on top of that, what we did see is that Kyrie didn't say not one word. He just posted a link to a movie. And all hell broke loose. And the crazy thing is that when I saw this happening, I didn't see not one NBA basketball player defending Kyrie and publicly speaking up
Yeah.
and saying, "What y'all did was wrong. We need to rally behind Kyrie. We need to boycott. We need to sit this game out because how they're treating this brother of ours is wrong." And even the black celebrities, the Hollywood people, the musicians,
Hmm.
not one famous black person stood up for Kyrie publicly. and denounce
Right.
what the ADL and the Jews were doing. Spike Lee, Denzel, Samuel Jackson, Will Smith,
Mhm.
Chris, all these black celebrities in the NBA. I mean, in the world
Yeah.
in America, and they all know who Kyrie Irving is. They all know who LeBron James is. They come and watch them at the games. They rub elbows with these millionaires at parties. So why is it that this basketball player has nobody backing him and supporting him? And I felt that we really failed it when that happened. It really showed us that we have no unity. Black people in America, we do not unify behind each other, because let that be a Palestinian, let that be somebody else, they will have the whole community rallying behind their ethnic group. They're just like the Palestinians
Mhm.
today. Even the whole world is rallying behind the Palestinians. The whole world
Yeah.
is free Palestine. They're supporting what's going on. Black people, Chinese, East Indians, Asians, Europeans, it doesn't matter. They're all supporting the Palestinians. They're supporting.
Even Candace Owens, your number one student.
Exactly. So it's like, come on, like we really failed the test. I shook my head when I seen that, and on top of that, I said all of this stuff is happening, and they're asking Kyrie to apologize, and he said, you're asking me to apologize for something I didn't create, I didn't make. And then they said,
Mhm.
well, I think Adam Silver wanted to hear out your mouth the words "I apologize," and Kyrie said, well, I'm not the one that made the documentary. And I'm sitting here
Exactly.
for a whole year, even to this day, nobody calls me, nobody emails me and says,
Right.
"Hey, we want to talk to you. We want to see why you made this movie. What's in your head? We want to discuss this movie with you. What was your intent behind this movie? Who are you?" Nobody wanted to know that. They didn't want to know that at all. And when they did call, or CNN, Washington Post, and Newsweek, they said, we want a statement. And I said, about what? About the movie that Kyrie is in trouble for. Your movie, right? I said, yes. They said, well, can we get a statement? I said, no. I said, because I know you're gonna alter it. And I know
Of course.
you're gonna put in your article what I probably didn't even say. And I said, no, you want questions and answered. I said, you're gonna have to do an interview. And
Yeah.
they got quiet. They got quiet. I said, hello? I said, you still there? Well, no, we don't really want to interview, Ryan. Well, if we need an interview, we'll call you. And I said, well, until you decide, I said, no statement. And they never got an interview because they never wanted to talk to me.
Mhm. Yeah, good call. Good call, because that's one of their tactics. That's what they do. You say one thing and they go and manipulate it however way they want and then publish that when you never said that. Yeah.
Hmm.
Awesome, awesome. Brother Rodney Jones says, "Yep, nobody but Jalen Brown." So do you know this
But
Jalen
no, but
Brown?
yeah, he was I think he was like the ambassador of the NBA players or something like that. But the thing is, Jalen did what's that guy that denied Christ? Christ said, you're gonna deny me 3 times.
Peter?
Um, yeah. And then
Mhm.
we're all ready to stand up for Kyrie, but then when somebody says, "Hey, aren't you that guy that was hanging with Christ?" He said, "No, not that wasn't me." So he did speak against it, sort of. But then when they started to like question, okay, are you anti-Semitic too? Then he started to say, well, no, that's not what I meant. That's not what I meant. No, no, you're getting it out of you get it out of context. That's not what I was doing. So he said
Mhm.
something trying to defend Kyrie, but then when the Jews and the ADL and the magazine started to come down on him, that he said, no, that's not what I meant. No, 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 no.
Oh
And he had to
man.
justify and explain himself. Yeah. So they're still
Nice.
scared at the end of the day.
Yeah, because they're being fed directly by those people. So I can only imagine that, because if they have no substance, if they have no money coming in, I don't know. I know Yah will provide, but they're just not ready to go through to carry that cross with you. you know, they they really
Yeah.
aren't. They see, oh, wait, that's how many million per day lost? Nah,
Yep.
you
Yep.
know. And we as Israel, we need to get beyond that. We need to be radical for Yah, in the way that no matter what, we know that Yah has got us. And we should
But you know,
be ready to stand for the truth at all costs.
I think if Kyrie would have stood his ground, and I think that what would have happened is the NBA would have had to say, okay, he's standing his ground, he's not folding, he's not apologizing, he kept the
Mhm.
post up, he's not taking the post down, he's standing 10 toes down. I think what they would have done was they would have said, okay, well, if we kick him out of the NBA, then essentially what's happening is that we're basically letting people know that this movie is so powerful, and this what he did was so powerful that it got one of the best players in the NBA removed from the NBA. And
Mhm.
if they would have kicked him out of the NBA for good, then everybody would have been like, wow, this guy actually lost his career over a movie, and the NBA kicked him off the league because of a movie. And I know all the NBA teams that would like to have had a guy like Kyrie Irving on their team for whatever amount of money that he would sign for, they will be wondering like, why is it that we cannot sign this guy? Because what he did in simply posting a movie, and he didn't even say anything. See, what Kyrie could have done right then is that he could have sued. I think he could have sued the NBA and the ADL because he
Mhm.
didn't he didn't break any law. He did not
Right,
break
and I
any
doubt that
law.
it's in their employee handbook, So if he didn't go against what's in the employee handbook, they cannot come
Yeah.
after him for that.
And how could they know that he agreed or disagreed with any of the content in the movie if he didn't say
Mhm.
anything? He just simply
Yeah,
posted it. That's it.
exactly. Yeah, that's crazy. All right. So, well, let's move on to the topic of us. And I know you deal a lot on who are the real Israelites. Um, and, you uh, obviously you're in South Africa now. You were in Ghana before. Um, and you also delve into DNA quite a bit. So help us understand a little bit about who the real Israelites are, how that relates to African Americans and all those the black people within the diaspora.
So a lot of the in doing my research, a lot of the tribes that had stories and traditions and customs and um, language that would connect back to the ancient Israelites in Hebrew, I found out that these tribes, whether it's Mandinka, Serer, Wolof, Tukulor, Soso, the Songhai and Bambara and the Kru and the Creole and the Temne and the Akan and the Eve and the Ga and the Krobo and the different tribes in Benin and the Igbo, Yoruba, and even to East Africa, the Congo, the Ovambo, the Mara, the Nguni people, the Pedi, the Soto, the Swana. I said all of these guys are saying similar stories on their exodus, how they left Egypt and how they got to where they are today, their traditions and customs, the dowry, the circumcision, the funeral practices that they do,
Mhm.
the ancient um, what's it called, the dietary law. I said all these people are saying the same thing. And when I found out that the DNA on the father side all showed the same thing, meaning E1B1A, meaning that the paternal Y DNA haplogroup for all these tribes is the same. And I said, wow, I said this is a people that are very numerous in their genetic ancestry, and they are spread all throughout sub-Saharan Africa, even
Mhm.
going into part of the Sahel. This is the lower part of the Sahel, but in terms of sub-Saharan Africa, they are the most numerous people, DNA wise. And we see these, the different tribes uh, in Congo and Angola and Gabon and Cameroon and Nigeria and Benin and Togo and Ghana. We see the different tribes. We know the tribes. We can read up the majority tribes in these countries, but many people don't know that they are all related to each other. And the way we could tell that is that the DNA is the same. And the DNA is also the same when you look at the blacks that are in the Caribbean islands and the blacks that are in North America and the Afro Latinos that are in South America and even the black cities that are in India, that are descendants of slaves from East Africa, they also have the same DNA. Even in the Comoros Islands in East Africa, you'll see the same thing. You even see some of the same DNA haplogroups that we have in Madagascar. So yeah, so this proves that paternally, meaning father to son, the son gets old, he's a man, he has a kid, he passes down his Y sex chromosome to his son, and that's been staying consistent for thousands of years, even dating back to the time of the Egyptian pharaohs and the dynasties. You can see the evolution of the E1B1A or E1B1 in North East Africa and Egypt, and you can see how it has evolved, and other DNA haplogroups have evolved when you start to go down Egypt into, let's say, Sudan and Ethiopia and Kenya and Tanzania and Uganda. Yeah, these things start to evolve into subgroups and even other haplogroups from the mixing of the Bantu people with the other Nilotic or Pygmoid races in Africa.
Awesome, awesome. And that reminded me of how many times, it says in the Bible how numerous we would be. And it sums it up really well in Hosea 1 and 10. And it says, and let me read from the KJV so that some people will be happy. Because if I read NIV, some people will be banging their head on the wall. So here is where is the KJV? Okay, it says Hosea 1:10 says, "Yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured nor numbered. And it shall come to pass that in the place where it was said unto them, ye are not my people, there it shall be said unto them, ye are the sons of the living Yah." Amen to that. That is beautiful. And it's just so amazing how numerous we really are. We are the people who the only people I would say who have a shared DNA ancestry and who are the most numerous when it comes
Yeah,
to having a common ancestry. So that
yeah,
traces us all the way back to one father,
yeah,
so that really actually supports the scripture
yeah.
of how numerous we will be. So
And
amen
we're
to
and
that.
we're probably the most divided people that are the same people because look, the Palestinians, they stick together like glue no matter where they are, and it's
That's
like, come
right.
on, like if the people in sub-Saharan Africa all had this common unity, the same way the Somalians have this unity,
Mhm.
whatever, then we will be powerful. We will probably rule half of Africa if we understood that we were all related. But we got this xenophobia, tribalism. I'm Nigerian, I'm Ghanaian, who makes the best jollof rice and all sort of stuff.
Ghana,
It's like
of course.
we're always fighting against each other. It's like competition.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. that aside, it just, so heartbreaking how even our leaders will go and partner with strangers faster than
Exactly.
they would with ourselves. A classic example is what's going on in Burkina, where, that young man has stood up and said, enough, we want our true independence, because we all know that even though they said that we're independent, we're not truly independent, because we don't really
Mhm.
make our own decisions. As a
Mhm.
sovereign state would be able to make their own decisions, and we don't control our resources. And, he wants to do that, and he is doing that. And instead of our brothers and sisters, the leaders around him to support him, you have some who have already sold out to the enemy and
Yep.
and are, in cahoots trying to plot and scheme and trying to bring him down. But
Yeah.
Yah will surely bring us through.
So that's the thing. The divide and conquer. Like you got the Zambian president sitting down with the United States of America. Then you got the president of Zimbabwe getting a phone call from Putin, and now he's flying on a plane to Moscow, Russia. They're sitting down, they're talking, they're smiling, they're shaking hands, they're forming agreements. You got the president of the Republic of the Congo. Putin gives them a call. Now they're doing deals. They're signing military deals. They're signing oil pipeline deals. They're shaking hands. They're smiling. Putin doesn't speak English. He doesn't speak French, but they're still able to make deals, even though both of them don't speak. The president of Republic of Congo, he doesn't speak Russian, and Putin doesn't
Hmm.
speak French. But they're
Right.
shaking hands, they're smiling. People are taking pictures. They got this deal going on. So all these things, we see the Chinese and the Jews, the De Beers, the Oppenheimers, getting all this money with diamonds in Botswana and South Africa, and all the Gentiles are making deals and deals and deals and deals and deals. But yet we don't see a united Sub-Saharan African territory where we all can take advantage of all the vast resources that the country has. There's no
Right.
reason why. There's no reason why you should be importing maize from Russia to Zimbabwe when the land is so fertile. Why are you importing all this food stuff? It makes no sense. And the oil that's in the RC, Angola, Ghana, Nigeria, we have to go to the Gentiles. We have to make alliances with the Gentiles, deals with the Gentiles, military alliance.
Experience.
I need an alliance. I need allies. So it's the craziest thing ever, and none of these other nations really have our best interests at heart. That's the reason why Russia just inked a deal with the Republic of Congo, the oil pipeline deal, and Russia is going to retain 90%. 90% of the deal, they're going to control all the proceeds and the funding because they are going to pay for everything. They're going to provide the employees all the stuff that they need, just like China does infrastructure in Africa.
Hmm.
They do all these things and then they control the greater percentage, not knowing
Yes.
that when you have the land, you call the shots. Either you tell them you take it or leave it. It's you want the diamonds, you want the cobalt, you want the uranium, like in the Congo and Namibia, and then go
Hmm.
and also in South Africa. You want the uranium, the plutonium, the coltan, the gold, the silver, the oil. You want all this stuff. Either you're gonna pay, you're gonna take our cut, or you're gonna leave. And that's how you
Exactly.
leverage what you have to make them pay you.
But we're not doing that. And, I received the biggest shame of my life when, was it last year? They had some kind of conference, like the African leaders and then Russia or something like that. Um, and one of the leaders was lamenting as if he was going to cry. And he said something like, "We don't even have fertilizer. How? we need We need fertilizer. We need Russia to supply fertilizer. You are in Africa. What do you mean you don't have fertilizer? Oh my goodness. I felt like I wanted to go hide in a hole somewhere. Because if
No,
they had even a third of the resources that we have,
yeah,
goodness. But we are
yeah.
sitting on it and we are going there begging as if they have something to offer.
Exactly. This guy from Zimbabwe, he said, Ron, he said, in my land, the soil is good, it's red. I said, what do you mean it's red? He said, it's red soil, it's good soil. And I looked it up. I said, yeah, that red soil is supposed to be the best soil. It has the iron, it has the aluminum,
Mhm.
it's good drainage. When it rains, it's gonna drain good. And he was telling me,
Yep.
he's like, yeah, Ron, he's like, this soil is so good. He said, in Europe they have black soil, but he said in Africa we have the type of soil that you just throw a seed in it, water it, give
And
it
it
rain, give it
grows.
sunlight, and it grows. You
Exactly.
don't need
That's
fertilizer.
Yep. That's our soil. That's the mineral and richest rich soil. Exactly. We
Hmm.
have everything we need, yet we are still begging. Somebody says, let me see here. Well, that's why the scriptures tell us in those days the tender man among you I will be evil towards his brother. Okay.
Yeah, Deuteronomy
Um
28. Yeah,
Same spirit our ancestors had in the book of Maccabees that sold us out to the Romans. Oh, don't talk to Brother Ron about Maccabees. don't don't start nothing you don't want to finish. All
it's
right.
okay.
And then Peter also says slave mentality. Uh-huh.
Yeah,
And Ace says poverty mindset.
yeah,
Baya says Mbote, Brother Ron, Sister Saram. Mbote, what does that mean? Is that greetings,
yeah. It's like a
peace?
greeting. Yeah, it's like a
Okay.
greeting.
All right. Mbote,
Mm.
back to you.
Chitungo.
Okay. All right. So, I'm always curious, going back to this Kyrie issue, but why are they so afraid though? What is it? Because the information has been out, especially from them. You have their scholars who have been preaching about their origins for many, many years and even taught it in their universities. So why is
Mm.
it now an issue? Why are they so afraid now?
I honestly believe, and I know this to be true, is that they once okay, this is what the Jews understood. They said, okay, everybody that's going to see this movie, they're going to start to wonder, is there another movie? If they pay attention to the movie at the end, it says the Negro Network. And if you go to the Negro Network, then you see that I have more than one movie. There's a part two. If you actually Google Hebrews to Negroes on Amazon.com, you're going to see books and another movie called Hebrews to Negroes 2, Revelation, the Age of the Awakening. And if you watch that movie, then it breaks down who are the white Jews today in Israel and who are the white Arabs today that dominate Islam and are the face of the so-called Ishmaelites. And yeah, and so I said that if people start to catch wind of this movie and they know the name of the movie and the name of the author, which they didn't really want to say on live TV, and they didn't want to say anything like, oh yeah, the guy that made the movie, his name is Ronald Dalton Jr. and he's the creator and founder of H2NTV.com. He's actually a filmmaker that's produced many more movies under the same title. They're not going to say that because that means they're going to start to open the Pandora's box and open up the wound even more. So when Kyrie did what he did, naturally people started to Google Hebrews to Negroes because they didn't know what this was about. When you Google Hebrews to Negroes, you get the Negro Network. If you scroll down far enough, then you're gonna see Hebrews to Negroes TV on the Google search. Then people are gonna say, what's Hebrews to Negroes TV? Then they're gonna see Hebrews to Negroes YouTube. Then they're gonna go to YouTube, and on YouTube, they're gonna see me doing what? Talking about H2N TV. In H2N TV, I got other movies that Amazon won't allow, they reject it. And ultimately, what it leads you to is that now you can find out who are the Israelites, in America, in the Caribbean, in Africa. Then you find out who they are, who the Jews are. And with a lot of my teachings, then I start to break down the Canaanites. And then I start to break down, okay, well, who are the descendants of Magog and Gog and Gomer and Meshach and Tubal and Togarmah and Persia and Cush and Put? Who are these people? You start to find these things out when you start to go down the Hebrews to Negroes rabbit hole, and they don't want just as they don't want us to know who we are and wake up. They don't want us to know who they are biblically, and they don't want us to know where our homeland is. Because if you know who you are, then you should search and desire to come back to your homeland, the place where you originate from, where all your brothers and sisters are at right now. And there you start to see the connections to everything you've been wondering all your life, because we are a people that have lost our heritage in America. We don't speak any African language. We don't have any African surname. We don't know what tribe we come from. None of the stuff we know unless we get a DNA test. But the DNA test is only going to tell us, 80% West African, Ghana, Togo, Benin, Cameroon, Congo, South African, Bantu. It may even give you a tribe like the Akan people or the Ewe or the Ga. But ultimately, if you stop there, you're not going to get to knowing your true identity and ancestry, meaning you're an Israelite. And that's how we start to unlock the door to all the enigmas and mysteries that we have not been able to explain through the universities, the churches. Your parents can't tell you nothing about your history other than you were a descendant of a slave, and we were treated as just as livestock and cattle. So they understood the name of the game was information, and they had to silence how people can get the information. So naturally, they had to tell Kyrie, the post is still on Amazon. No, the post is still on Instagram. The post is still on Twitter. When are you going to take it down? We're asking you the question because we see the post is still on Twitter, and he's like,
Is it still there, or did he
no, no,
eventually take it down?
he
Took it
deleted
down.
it.
Oh
That was the
man.
first thing he did. The first thing he did was
Ah.
delete the post. Then after he deleted the post, they kept asking him to apologize, and he kept saying, "I can't be anti-Semitic if I'm Semitic, and that's where I'm at. That's where I stand." And we all watched day after day to see when would they crack Kyrie, when would they crack him? Because in the beginning he said, "I can't be anti-Semitic I can't be anti-Semitic if I'm Semitic. If I know who I am, who I come from, I can't be anti-Semitic." And he was standing his ground, and we were like, "Yeah, yeah." But then eventually they started hitting the penalties and the suspension. Eventually, they were saying he needs to apologize and he needs to do all of this stuff. And eventually, he did apologize. Eventually, he got back in the NBA, and it was back to regular programming news. Always just program your brain,
Right.
like they do right now. P Diddy, R. Kelly, Drake, Migos, Super Bowl, Cardi B, Jay-Z. It's the same stuff. Program
So
these black
weird,
people.
though. That's just so weird. How can you tell a grown man he needs to check these 6 boxes of items or else he cannot come back to it? What? That's just
That
weird.
that that is example of how they used to treat black people in slavery and post-slavery. And they say, "Well, come here, boy," and you come and say, "Okay." And he said, didn't I tell you that you needed to do this and do that? Listen to me when I'm talking to you. Look up at me now." And the slave, or
Yeah.
the ex-slave will be like, "Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Now listen to me. You need to do this. You need to do this. You need to do that. Now go on now and do it. When you get done, come back and tell me, and then we're gonna see what you did." So this is what black people used to do, and they will say, "Yes, sir. Okay, sir. Yes, sir. Right away, sir."
Mhm.
And they would do everything that the white man would tell them to do because they're conditioned to take orders from the white man. And so the
Exactly.
NBA and the ADL, they made a big checklist of all the stuff he had to do. Like he was a child. Like he's a child.
That's
Like
so
he's not an
sad.
adult with a wife and kids. You need to do this. You
Mhm.
need to get sensitivity training. You need to meet with the rabbis. You need to apologize. You need to donate money. All these different things. The same thing that they did with
Mhm.
Nick Cannon and Nick Cannon had to sit down with the rabbi and go to the Holocaust Museum and get re-educated. He had to get re. They taught he had to get re-educated on Jewish history and Black history. And he said, I thank my Jewish brothers for allowing me to go to the Holocaust Museum and to learn their hurt and their pain and their suffering. And yeah, we need to unify together as one. They basically just brainwashed this guy and sent him back. Said, all right, the guy's been brainwashed. He did what he told him to do. Go on now. So yeah.
That's crazy. They even I remember one of my elders telling me that even in Everland, they used to flog the fathers. So if you didn't send your children, you yourself and your family are supposed to go into the church, the Catholic. You're supposed to show up for mass. You know, whenever mass was, and if you didn't go, or you at least did not send your children, they would march into your compound, bring you out, and flog you in front of the whole family, including in front of your children and your wives. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
so sad. And speaking of their history, I remember brother Baya mentioned our days in Clubhouse. You have debated a number of rabbis, right, of Jewish rabbis in Clubhouse, and I have witnessed it myself. And it seems to me like the argument is always the Holocaust. Granted, the Holocaust is a terrible event, and no human being should be subjected to that. But how does that match with the children of Israel?
Um. Well, they whenever I used to be in Clubhouse, I would say, okay, well, you guys had the Holocaust, but how many people died? And they would say it, and I would say, how long did it last? They would say, how long did the Holocaust last? I say, what about the stuff that you did and other nations did against us in our Holocaust? All the people that died, were murdered, tortured, killed, raped, mutilated for centuries, and the money you made from doing this. And I said that somebody owned the slave ships, somebody owned the plantations, somebody was a slave master, somebody
Hmm.
was. This was a person. That person had a genealogy and ethnicity, and we can get down to the very DNA of the people that were doing these things to us. But why is it that we don't talk about our Holocaust? But the thing is, when you look at the scripture, it tells us in Deuteronomy 28, I will bring you into Egypt again by way of ships,
Hmm.
and no man shall redeem you. And it
Yeah.
says this, and I'm like, did any of this happen to the Jews in the War of the Jews by Josephus Flavius? Does it mention the word onia for ships? There's a word for ships in Greek. I said, is it there? And it's not
Mhm.
there. I said, so
It's
then
not
how
there.
in the world in the Deuteronomy 28 that says that I will bring thee into Egypt by way of ships? And
Hmm.
we know that it didn't happen, in the Roman times. It didn't happen in the Greek times. It didn't happen in the 1930s or 1940s. So I always like to bring up our Holocaust when
Yeah.
or our suffering when they bring up the Holocaust. And the thing is, I always say to them, because in Clubhouse they'll say, "You deny the Holocaust." I said, "No, I don't deny the Holocaust." I
No,
say in the book,
I've
in the book,
never
I
heard
talk
you
about the
deny the
Holocaust.
Holocaust.
Yeah,
Hmm.
in the book, I talk about the Holocaust and the Rhineline bastards, the black people or mixed black people that were equally affected. I said it's in the book. If you will read the book, you'll see that I talk about the Holocaust. What you guys are mad about is what a Jewish guy said about the number of people that he questions dying in the Holocaust. I don't think most Jews are not going to question, did the Holocaust exist? Did it even exist? But some people may question a number of people that died. And that's just like somebody saying, well, Ron, I don't think 100 million people died. or 10 million people died with King Leopold in Belgium. I think it was more like 1 million. Okay, if you think it's 1 million and we say it's 10 million, then you believe it's 1 million. We don't know why you believe it's 1 million, but okay, I'm not going to cry over it. I'm not going to
Right.
punish you because
Yeah.
I say it's 10 million, you say it's 8 million. And this is the craziness behind when anybody says anything about the Holocaust, then you're really going to be up for the chopping block if you're a celebrity to
Mhm.
apologize. They may not tell me to apologize because they know I'm not going to apologize, and they don't want to speak to me anyway. So they're not going to tell
Right.
me we want Ron Dalton to apologize publicly because they know that getting me on camera or getting me on to speak in front of people is a no-no. So they have to get the person that promoted my work to apologize.
Mhm. Let me get to the sister's question before it gets lost into the sea of messages. This is from Sister Yama. Please, I am in Germany and I have two questions to ask the doctor regarding the Bamileke people, please. Okay, sis, go ahead and ask your question. You have to type it in so we can see it and read it here.
The Bamileke people
Okay, so
are
she has here.
yeah. Yeah, so
What
the
does it mean that the Bamileke have 100% haplogroup E1B1A, and that, for example, the Igbo only have 89%, and certain people of Ghana have 92%? Does this mean that the Bamileke have never mixed?
no, that doesn't mean that. It just means
No.
that in their sample study, when they feel like they tested 100 Bamileke people, that all of them had E1B1A. And let's just say in this particular study, if they tested 100 Igbo people, that like let's say 89% had E1B1A, and then maybe another group, the other percent had like E2 like E2 1A, or another one might have had B2B or R1B. It just means the study that they did, that particular study that they did, whoever did the study, when they tested people in the village that identified as Igbo, they came up with certain percentages. That doesn't mean that the whole um, country of Ghana is all E1B1A. Now but you got to look at the fact that there's other haplogroups that can be seen in Ghana and Nigeria that still uh, is a marker of the Bantu expansion or Bantu migration into Africa, but it may not be E1B1A. You may see E1B1, you may see E1B1A2. So when you get to like Congo and Cameroon, at least in a lot of the studies, what they found that you'll see a high percentage of E1B1A. But even then, depending on who's doing the study and where you're doing the study at, you could get some people that have other haplogroups from other tribes.
Okay,
But
thank you.
at the end of the day, the Bamileke people are considered a Bantu people, same as the people in the Congo, and the Bantu people. Most of them, like 100%, are E1B1A. Every African that's in Sub-Saharan Africa that has got their DNA tests that have not mixed with the white man, that are not African Americans, their DNA is always E1B1A that I've seen.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And well, speaking of Africa, I know you teach that Africa is the promised land. I think that's the one thing that I disagree with you on. But it's okay, we're learning, as long as Yah gives breath, we're all increasing in knowledge. So tell us
Mhm.
about that. What are the evidences that you have found um, that points to Africa as ancient Kana land, right?
Okay, well, the one of the things that we have to identify is who are the Canaanites. The Canaanites um, is listed before the table of nations. Before the table of nations in Genesis 10, in the chapter before it, in Genesis 9, we hear about Noah and his son Ham and his son Canaan. So before we can even learn about Noah's sons and their sons, in Genesis 9, we know that Ham had a son named Canaan. And we know this whole story about what he did or what Ham did or what Canaan did and how, curse of Canaan. But whether Canaan was the first son or Cush was the first son born, we have to look at, okay, how old are the Canaanites? The Canaanites are old. They're old, just about as old as Ham, Shem, Japhet. So then that means that they've been around for a long time, and they have to have existed in their own territory for a long time. The same with Cush, the same with the ancient Egyptians. Now we see the ancient Egyptians in the pharaohs of Egypt in lower and upper Egypt. We see the pyramids and the temples, and we can also see the pharaohs and the kings of Cush in Sudan. Whether you're talking about the Napata civilization, the Kerma, the Kudruka, these are Neolithic time periods, and then going down to the kingdom of Kush in the Marodi kingdom, and post-Marodi kingdom in Sudan. We still see that this ancient Kush empire and people existed in Sudan. So now we have to say, okay, well then where was the descendants of Put or Libya? Well, we know that next door to Egypt, that they have found archaeological evidence to prove that the ancient Libico Berber writings of the ancient Libyans were found in Libya. And the people that speak these languages or have in their alphabet or their script almost at least 20 to 30% of the ancient script that the Libyans spoke is the Tuareg people, the Tuaregs that are in Libya, they're in Mali, they're in Niger, they're in Niger. I mean, they're in Burkina Faso, the ones that look like Moors, the modern day Moors. And so then and they ruled ancient Egypt for certain dynasties. We can see it's like Pharaoh Shoshank, Pharaoh Eaput. And so you have these pharaohs that were Libyan pharaohs of Egypt, just as we have Cushite pharaohs of Egypt. But we never have a Canaanite pharaoh of Egypt. So why is it that in the kingdoms of Egypt, in the different dynasties from 1 all the way to 25, we see that the Libyans ruled as kings over Egypt for a certain period of time. Then the Egyptians, of course, they ruled over Egypt for a certain period of time. Then we see the Cushites ruling over Egypt for a certain period of time, the Cushite kings over Egypt. But what about the Canaanites? Why are the Canaanites ruling over Egypt at any time in history? Well, the Egyptians and the Romans and the Greeks and even the Libyans, they all knew that there was a land beyond the Nile where the Nile origin was said to begin, that close to the equator, that there was a land that had everything that you can think of. It had the best land, it had mountains, hills, rivers, valleys, waterfalls, all types of animals, and all types of plant life. They knew that they can get exotic animals, they can get all these type of minerals and different things, precious stones. They can get it if they simply follow the Nile River up, or in our map today will be south, in the south direction. And when the people went down to the origin of the Nile, to like Uganda and the Congo area, then they ran into these small little black people, and even the Bantu people that are in Kenya and Uganda and Tanzania and Malawi and South Africa and the Congo. They say when we migrated from Egypt down south, we ran into these little small black people. and they have a name for them. But in each tribe in Africa, you say, well, who are these little black people? And they'll tell you who they are in their language and what the word means. And I said, you mean to me they've been there? They was always there? And they say, yeah, they say they are the first nation, the first nation. And I remember I was in South Africa, and I was sitting down talking to a Soto guy, Basotho, and I said, who are the people over there? They kind of look like Mandela. They look like, are they Khoisan? Are they Khoisan? Because they got the Asian eyes, looks. And then he said, no, Ron. He said, those are the Canaanites. I said, huh? I was like, what? I said, well, excuse me? He said, yeah, they're the Canaanites. And he said, in our language, we say this. In their language, this is what they say. I said, what does it mean? He said, it means the first nation, or the Canaanites. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, Ham had 4 sons. And depending on who you ask, Canaan was the first son that Ham had, Canaan. And he got the biggest part of Africa. And this is why I think that the Pygmoid people, or the Khoisan, say that they are the first nation, and they've been there for a long time. Almost just about as old as the people in South Sudan, like the Dinka and the Anuak and the Shilluk. So when I started to research these things, and I realized that the genetics of the Bantu people is intertwined with these little black people. And then when I started to look at the DNA, the skeletal analysis, of the crania, and we could tell by looking at the skulls in ancient Egypt, the Negro skulls, the Egyptian skulls, the so-called Arab skulls, the Caucasian skulls, and when they tested the skulls in ancient Israel, dating back to Neolithic B, Neolithic C, and post Neolithic or pre Neolithic. They have these skulls, right? And the skulls are not the same type of skulls that you would see in the African pygmy or the Khoisan, because the Khoisan people and the pygmies have a particular skull pattern and shape. And the skulls that they found in Israel were different. And they didn't find any of these skulls of these little black people, or the Khoisan, in ancient Israel. And they're doing all types of angles from the Sella Turcica and the atlas of the spine, the straight line up to the nasal bridge, up to the maxilla, to the mandible. They're doing the capacity of the skull, because the skulls have different capacities. The Neanderthal has a larger capacity brain than the average Homo sapien. You have different shapes of skull that are different with the Negro, with the Australoid, with the Caucasian, with the Neanderthal, and all these different ethnic groups. But one of the things that they did not find in ancient Israel was the DNA or the skulls of the ancient Canaanites, which I call the Pygmoid races, or the ancient Cushites, or the Egyptians, the pure Egyptians. And I said, well, why is it that we don't see these things along the way of the Exodus route in either Sinai Peninsula, in Saudi Arabia, in Jordan, or in Israel? Why don't we see traces of a mixed multitude that left with Moses and migrated during the Exodus and eventually made their way to the land of Canaan? Because we know at the end of the day that there were people that were of a mixed breed of Israelite father, Egyptian mother, Israelite father, Cushite mother, Egyptian father, Israelite mother, Cushite father, Israelite mother. All these things, even with the sons of Keturah, because you have Abraham and you have Keturah, and you have Jethro the Midianite, and Zipporah was supposed to be a Midianite. That means that the descendants of Midian were half Abrahamic, Shemitic, and half possibly Hamitic. And the way we can find these things is through DNA and other studies. But one of the things that I really started to ask myself questions is that in the Bible, in the book of Numbers and Leviticus, it lists a lot of different animals, a lot of animals that are not seen in Saudi Arabia, they're not seen in the Sinai Peninsula, they're not seen in Israel. You know, we don't see swamplands and marshes, crocodiles and hippopotamuses and manatees and lions and leopards and elephants and giraffes and zebras, jackals, hyenas, dogs, and all these things that in ostriches. We don't see these things in ancient in Israel to this day. And the way that the Bible describes the land of Canaan, we don't see these things today in Israel. It's a total opposite. And people may say that the south means the Negev, meaning the Negev part of Israel, which was the most barren desert, dry place of Israel, the south. But they neglect the fact that the word south in the Bible uh, does mean the direction south, just like the king of the north and the king of the south, north, south, east, and west. It's in the Bible. And so when we look at these things, we see how Abraham descended down from the land of Canaan to get to Egypt. And then he went up. He went up. It says he went up and south. And it says he continued to go south. And he said, and before the Israelites even went to Egypt with Joseph and joined him, Abraham says, the people that I dwell amongst and live amongst is the Canaanites. So one of the questions I have to ask myself is in reality, does the land of Canaan match Africa, or does it match Israel? And there's certain things that um, we can we can manipulate, we can change, we can delete, we can add, we can uh, make copies of, we can create storylines out of certain things. But at the end of the day, what I always have to look at is that who are the original Israelites? Meaning that who are the walking Bible or the walking people that had the oral histories in their head and they passed down these oral histories and these traditions and customs, and they even passed down the DNA. Who are they? They are the people in Sub-Saharan Africa. These are things that you cannot delete. You cannot delete somebody's oral history. You can't change their oral history. You can't make it up. You can't teach the Bantu people their traditions and customs. There are people that actually believe that the Hebrew that is seen in the Ewe language, the Temne language, the Kikongo, the Bokongo language, or the Kikongo language in other places, even Swahili, they say the reason why it's there, and we can show you that it's there, is because the Jews came down and they taught the black people the Hebrew, and they'll say the reason why you see all these traditions and customs being practiced by the Bantu people is because the Jews at one point in history had communication and were around the Bantu people, and the Bantu people learned from the Jews these traditions and customs, and they adopted the customs and traditions of the white Ashkenazi Jews. Likewise, the language, but they are not the real Jews because they learned it. And I said, well, did they go to a yeshiva? Did the Bantu people attend schools every day to learn the traditions and customs and be taught by the white Ashkenazi Jews? The answer is no. And I said there has been no intermixing between the Ashkenazi Jews and the Bantu people because the Bantu people and the Ashkenazi Jews share their own separate DNA. And so there's a lot of things that you might say that they do that proves that they're the Israelites. Okay, they speak Hebrew. So what? Okay, they say they keep all the laws and they know the calendar. They know the feast days. They know that Passover is in the spring. They know that Shavuot this day. They know that Tabernacles is this day. They got it down pat. How do they know that if they're not the Jews? They're in the land of Israel. They say that they got all these archaeological evidence to prove these things. And they say, well, what year did they find the archaeological evidence? Was it 1,000 years ago? They found it in the 1800s when they were colonizing Africa. When did they find these things? And how big is the archaeological artifacts that they're finding? Is as big as my cell phone? Is it big as like a chair? Is it big as like a office desk? Is that how big it is? And how did they get from point A to point B? How did they get from when they found it in the 1800s? How did they get from where they say they found it at to the museum? They obviously have somebody that can pick it up and move
Mm-hmm.
it. So if they picked it up and moved it, how do they know that these things that have ancient Hebrew on it or something on it that looks like Hebrew, how do we know that they didn't find it somewhere else and tell us that it's found
We
in
don't
Israel?
know. we don't
We don't know.
we don't know any of that. Yeah. You know,
Yes.
my point of contention is, what all the scriptures, and I mean there are many where it tells us how the land was going to be destroyed and that the people were going to be scattered into all the nations. There are a few that I can mention. Amos 9, Amos 6, 1 Kings 9 verse 7, Deuteronomy 28:64, Isaiah 11:12. Just to name a few. How do you reconcile that with the current sub-Saharan African land, since the African Hebraic people are there still? So if they are there, how are they still dispersed in the world? And in well, one of the scriptures says that Jerusalem would be trodden down by the Gentiles until the time
Mhm.
of the Gentiles come to an end. So are we the Gentiles? You know,
No,
why are we
I got
there
that.
if that's
I
really
got
the
that.
land?
Yeah, I
We're
got
supposed
that.
to be
So
scattered.
yeah, so the thing is, we were scattered to the four corners because we
Mhm.
see that on the transatlantic slave trade, they were scattered to the west. We see when talking to the Pacific Islanders in particular, they say that they used to live where Lake Tanganyika is, and they have stories and songs that tell of how they lived there. And the Lake Tanganyika borders Tanzania and the Congo and Zambia. And they said that they lived on the banks of Lake Tanganyika, which is on the border of the Congo, Tanzania, and Zambia, once part of the Kingdom of the Congo. And they said that they were there for a long time and that they left. They said, you know what, my family, it's like saying the Dalton family and the Colosso family, like Kofi, we're just gonna leave. Like, you know what? We had enough of you Israelites. You know, you guys are fighting each other. We're not getting along. We're just gonna take our clan, our family, and we're gonna get on a boat and we're gonna sail to the east, to another land where we can just live our life as the Daltons and follow the laws and just continue our family line there. And this is what they did. They went to the east. And you have with the Arab slave trade, a lot of our brothers and sisters from Kenya, from Ethiopia down to Mozambique were sent into the slave trades to the east on the Indian Ocean. But then when you look at in particular Luke 21:24, you know, in the Bible, when the Bible ends, nowhere in the Old Testament does it tell you about the Greek kings that besieged Jerusalem and sent us into exile or slavery. It doesn't talk about the battles that we faced when the Greeks came supposedly to Jerusalem or Israel. Nowhere in the Bible in the Old Testament does it say that Pompey the Great besieged Jerusalem in 63 BC, and he went into the holiest of holies temple, or went in there and said, "I don't see nothing here. You guys are making it seem like it's some holy place. Like, I don't see nothing. You know, there's no Ark of the Covenant in here." You know, and walked out. And during this time, supposedly during the Greco-Roman time, the Jews or the Israelites, whoever you want to call, whoever you want to talk about, because the Maccabees, you know, people use that as gold standard. During this time, the Jews, just like in the Persian era, the Jews had the ability to continue their religious worship of their religion. The Persians, I'm sorry, the Persians didn't tell them you can't practice Judaism anymore. No, they let them come back, let them do their thing, rebuild the second temple. When the Greeks came, they didn't destroy the second temple. They didn't tell the Israelites that you guys can't practice Judaism no more. You know, we're gonna throw all you Jews in jail, and we're gonna exile you out of the land. No, because if that was the case, we wouldn't see all these high priests in the land of the Hellenistic era. We wouldn't see the Edomites or the Herodians appointing so-called high priests, and high priests being selected in that time. And then when the Romans came, we see that you had, you know, the Herodians, king of the Jews. You had people that were supposedly in the New Testament going to the synagogue to reason, to pray, to debate the law, to have conversation. This is in the Bible, the New Testament. So even in the New Testament, the Jews were able to continue their holy days, their celebration, the feast of dedication, and the stuff in the so-called, the word synagogue is a Greek word. But here's the thing. When Christ quoted Luke 21:24, it says, "In Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles." Remember, at this time, Christ is still alive. Christ is still alive when he's saying this. Read the whole chapter from the beginning to the end. You'll see that from the beginning to the end, Christ is talking about the future, because he's telling you how what's going to happen when we get to the end of days. You know, the sun, the stars, the sea and the waves roaring, men's heart filling with fear, and all these things that he's telling us. You know, people are going to be worried about getting married, drinking, eating, gluttony, worrying about the cares of this world. And it says in the end of that chapter, watch ye and pray always, that ye may be counted worthy to escape all the things that are going to come to pass, and when you're going to be standing before the Son of Man. So when you look at the scripture, Christ is foretelling a future event. We think that he's foretelling when the Romans put an end to the second temple. But here's the thing: the word trodden down or downtrodden means an oppressed people. It means to ruthlessly and harshly deal with a people. And it does not say that Hebrew word for trodden down is exactly what it is: a downtrodden, oppressed people. It doesn't mean that the Gentiles came and kicked out all the Israelites. They just kicked them all out. Like, you guys got to go. You're out of here. Get in the boot.
Mhm.
It says that the Jews are going to be trodden down, meaning downtrodden by the or oppressed by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles is complete or fulfilled. So what it's telling you is that in the future, the Israelites are going to be downtrodden, oppressed, and ruled over and just done wrong by the Gentiles until the times that the Gentiles rule is over. And as we see in history, that since the European Gentiles decided to come to Africa, uh, the scramble for Africa, before that, the Europeans have really not ventured into Sub-Saharan Africa. They didn't know what they were going to run into, but they knew that there were people down there, and they wanted to find the source of the Nile. Not only, in my opinion, not only did they know that there were little black people down there and wild animals and all this good stuff down there in terms of resources, but I believe that they also knew the Portuguese, the Arabs, the Dutch, the Spanish. They knew that there were people down there, and they came down there. They sent the missionaries down there to get them a repackaged version of the Bible that was their history. And you're telling them their new history, like, oh, okay, the Bible says this and that, and in Leviticus and Numbers it says this, Deuteronomy, and they're probably looking like, well, this is what we live. This is what our stories remind us of. The same thing you're reading to us. So when they came down to Africa, They had to retrain their brains to start to believe in the book, the English book, the Latin book, the Greek book, and that the Savior is white, all these different things. And when they came down there, they also came to conquer, to oppress, to do exactly what the scripture says, to trodden down or downtrodden the Bantu people, because the Bantu people are a downtrodden people, because the all the nations at the Scramble for Africa at the Congo Basin Conference, they all sat down and said, "This is what we're going to do in Africa," and then they did it, and then the last blow was slavery, colonization. They came with a religion, they came with their language, they came with their education system, they came with stealing the resources, they came with erasing heritages, they came with killing, raping, pillaging, and even to this day, they still been doing it. And I think that the time of the Gentiles is not going to be up until the two sticks prophecy comes to pass. And when many of the remnant that was scattered to the four corners um, starts to come back, because it says that they're going to be led away captive by the sword, and you'll be, Jerusalem shall be trodden down into all nations. So when it says that you will be captured by the, and by the sword and sent away captive into all nations in Luke 21:24, that key point in that scripture, it says captive by the sword into all nations. We can read it right now. We can pull it up on the screen. If you read it closely, if you want to pull it up real quick, I'll break it down so people can understand this scripture, because people use
Okay.
this
You
all
said
the time.
Luke 24?
Luke 21, you can start at verse 20, and then we can just look at the main one, which is 21:24.
Okay. Oh, wait a minute. Did I somehow I have here 24?
Yeah, Luke 21.
All right. Can everybody see the screen? We're on Bible Gateway, and this is the King James Version. From which verse, brother?
Yeah, go down to 20. Let's go down to verse 20.
Okay.
Okay,
It
here we go.
says,
Okay, wait. Go back up. Go back up. Go back up. Go back up. Keep going. Keep going. Okay, here we go. Here we go, right here. So Christ is alive, and he's telling his disciples, he's telling them something about the future. They say, Master, meaning Christ, when shall these things be? And what sign will there be when these things shall come to pass? Meaning about the end of days. And Christ says, of course, let no man deceive you. For many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ. And at the time draw near, go ye not therefore after them. And you shall hear of wars and commotions. Be not terrified, but these things must come to pass. But the end is not by and by. Nation shall come against nation, kingdom against kingdom. Great earthquakes shall be in diverse places, famine,
mhm.
pestilences, fearful signs, and great signs from the heaven. But before all of these, they shall lay their hands on you and persecute you, deliver up to the synagogue, which is the Greek word, and prisons, and being brought before kings and rulers for my name's sake. And it shall turn to you for a testimony. I think this is not the KJV, but it's okay.
It
Keep
is
going down.
KJV.
It is? Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
It reads a little different. Okay, so it says, if you keep going down. Okay. All right. We see the Judea fleeing to the mountains. Okay, keep going. Keep going. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Oh, wait. Right here.
Okay.
Okay. So Christ is living during the Roman era. He's talking supposedly during the Roman era of Julius Caesar, Pontius Pilate. and the Herodians are on the scene. He says, and they, meaning the Israelites, shall fall by the edge of the sword, meaning there's going to be some kind of invasion, and shall be led away captive into all nations, not Egypt. The War of the Jews and Josephus Flavius will say 98,000 Jews were sent into the Egyptian mines to be slaves. Nowhere in the antiquity of the Jews or War of the Jews does Josephus say and use the word onia or ships, or the word for ships is nos or pleo. In Greek, is pleo or nos, like nautilus. Nowhere in these texts by Greco-Roman Gentile Josephus Flavius does he say onia. They were taken to Egyptian mines by way of ships. Remember, supposedly Egypt and Israel border each other. You don't have to use ships to get from Israel to Egypt, but if you don't want to walk, I guess you're going to use a ship, which is going to be a ship sailing along the coast, which is stupid. So he says, Christ is saying that the Israelites will be led away captive, meaning they're captured like as slaves, into all nations. Now, the slaves in the 13, 14, 15, 16, 1700s, they were captured. They were bound by their hands, their wrists, their neck, and their feet in chains. They were thrown on ships in the Arab slave trade and transatlantic slave trade, and they were scattered to many nations, not just Egypt. And it says that Jerusalem, which in Hebrew is Yira Salem, Yira Salem. Yira, Jehovah Yahra, or Yahuwah Yahra means basically the Lord will provide peace, or the Lord will provide. Yahra, Y-I-R-E-H, means to provide. He will provide, Yah will provide. And so when you add the Yira Salem, it means Yah will provide peace. So Jerusalem is a land that Yah provides peace to his people. Just like Zion is like a city, but it's also Zion is the people, Israel. So Christ is saying that the territory or the land of peace shall be downtrodden or trodden down of the Gentiles, which when we see Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, the Gentiles came into the land of peace, because before that happened, we know that the Greeks and the Romans and the Vandals and all these Germanic tribes were conquering North Africa. We know that this was so many wars fought between the Egyptians and the Cushites and the Puttites and the Assyrians and the Babylonians and the Persians and the Greeks and the Romans. The Egyptians had just about every nation fighting for rulership and power, from the Hamitic tribes to the Assyrians to the Babylonians to the Greeks to the Romans. Egypt was always being trodden down by the Gentiles throughout history. But there was a land that the Europeans and the white man came into, Sub-Saharan Africa, that was really an untouched land. That was a land of peace. Nobody was going down there fighting any wars with them. The Gentiles were not down there. At least the Europeans weren't down there. But when the scramble for Africa happened, and you got all these European nations, the Spanish, the Portuguese, the Dutch, Elmina Castle, Portuguese, then Dutch, then British, and then the Germans and all these different people. Yeah, they came down to Sub-Saharan Africa, the land of peace, the land of Canaan, and they started to downtrodden the people of that land. And what did they do? They colonized the land. They draw up the boundaries. They set up the protectorates. They treated the Israelites in Sub-Saharan Africa harshly. Apartheid, the Herero, Namibia massacre in Namibia, the Herero and the Nama people in Herero, the Congo people, the genocide of King Leopold, 10 million people died under King Leopold, the Kikuyus by the British And all these things was happening, right? The British and the Ashantis and the Akans and the Eves and the Ga, all these crazy, the Benin, the Great Wall of Benin in Nigeria, the Dahomey warriors fighting against the Europeans. Everybody's fighting against the Europeans. And they're getting subdued by the Europeans. They're bending down on their knees between the Europeans' legs. They're being casted off to other islands, like the king of the Ashanti, just exile him to another island. And on top of that, they did what? Exactly what Christ says, and shall be led away captive into all nations. They started sending the Bantu people into slavery, into all nations. And exactly what that scripture states is what happened to Sub-Saharan Africa. When you look at it, when 70 AD happened, and so supposedly the Romans destroyed the Second Temple, did the Romans scatter the Israelites by way of slavery captives into all nations? Did they send them into all nations? If so, where? Where in 70 AD did the Bantu people, the Israelites, were sent by the Romans into slavery? Where? India, China, the Americas, Africa, Europe? Did they go into slavery in 70 AD in Spain and Portugal, or in Italy or Rome, or in Scandinavia? Where did they go into slavery? Captive into all nations. In 70 AD, the Romans. Where is it at? It's not there because it happened in Sub-Saharan Africa. And then we know that it's talking about the future, because then immediately the next verse after that, verse 25, Christ then says, and there shall be sign in the suns and the moon and the stars, and upon the earth distress of nations with perplexity, season with seeing waves roaring, men's heart filling them for fear, looking at the things that are coming upon the earth, the powers of the heaven should be shaken, and then they shall see the Son of Man coming in a cloud with power and glory. That's pretty much at the end. So Christ is kind of telling you that no, this is not happening next year. He's not telling you that all the stuff I'm telling you from 24 on down, oh, this stuff's going to happen in 5 years from now. No, he's foreseeing the future and telling them, look, this is what's going to happen to these Israelites. All these things. In addition to that, we're going to have all these signs in the sun and the moon, the distress of nations. And then when we conclude the finale, the Son of Man coming in the cloud with great power and glory in the book of Revelations. And we look at Revelations chapter 12. It talks about those that bear the testimony of Christ, and they keep Yah's commandments, and the dragon is wrought with the woman and all this stuff. And it talks about the wilderness and nourishment and all these things. So the way I combat a lot of these scriptures is people will bring up this. They'll say, what about the Babylonians? The Israelites went into Egypt. They went into Egypt. Okay, they went into Egypt. So what if the Israelites went from the land of Canaan, they went into Egypt because of whatever happened? But here's the thing: at the end of the day, when we start to touch on these subjects, what about the Assyrians? What about the Babylonians? What about the Persians? Okay, well, who are the Persians today? Who are the Assyrians today? Who are the Babylonians today? Where are they at? When you start to connect these dots, then you'll start to say, is there DNA evidence of the Babylonians and the Assyrians and the Persians in Africa or Sub-Saharan Africa? Because after all, the Assyrians and the Babylonians and the Persians, they should be still living today. If the Persians weren't living today, their descendants, then why is it in Ezekiel 38 that it says that the nations of Cush, Put, and Persia are going to be some of the nations that are going to come against the Israelites in their land? And it says in the scripture 38, it says you're going to wake up one day, you're going to say, you're going to have an evil thought in your mind, or evil plan, or evil scheme. Let us go into the land of unwalled villages, to those that are dwelling in peace, and they dwell securely and safely, neither having bars nor gates, and dwell in the midst of the land. Where are the villages in Israel? When you go to Israel, you say, take me to the village. And where's the unwalled villages? No, there's no unwalled villages in Israel. There's walls everywhere. You got the West Bank, you got Gaza, you got the Iron Dome over here, you got the police over here, you got these walls over here to protect us from the Palestinians and these people. You're gonna say, well, what village? We're living in a police state in Israel. And so when we look at these things of Ezekiel 38 mentioning these other nations, Gomer and Magog and Meshach and Tubal and Togarmah, it's a known fact. One of the known facts is that in the YAHsara correspondence, in the Geneva collection, that the YAHsara correspondence mentions King Joseph Hamelech, meaning Joseph the king, son of Aaron Hamelech the king. So in the Geneva collection, in the YAHsara correspondence, this Khazarian king, this is a real document. This Khazarian king named, and this is how he writes his letter. He says, Joseph Hamelech, son of or Ben or Ban, Aaron Hamelech, the Turk. He says this. He says it in the text. He calls himself a Turk, a Turk. In those days, the Turkic people lived in Central Asia. The Turkic people had a lineage going back to the sons of Japheth and his son Gomer and his son Togarmah. Togarmah. And it says in the text that they are the descendants of Togarmah. And Togarmah is also linked to be the descendants of the Armenians, of the Turks, the Ottoman Turks, the Oghuz Turks, the people that we see today that we call Arabs, Ottoman Palestine, Ottoman Iraq, Ottoman Egypt, the Ottoman Turks, even those that are in Turkey, Ottoman Turkey, because in Turkey they speak the Arabic language and they also speak Turkish. The Turkish language, if you ask any Turkish or Turk in Turkey, you say, where does the Turkish language come from? And they'll say from Turkmenistan. It's a Turkic dialect. It's a Turkic family of languages. And from the Turkic family of languages, we got the Turkish language, and we adopted Islam, and now we speak Arabic too. So when you look at the white Arabs and the white Jews today that are descendants of these Turks, the descendants of Togarmah, the son of Gomer, if the white Arabs and the white Jews make up the majority of 9 million people in Israel, meaning that 7 million are Jews, 2 million are probably Arabs, they're all Turks at the end of the day, then how can the children of Togarmah come against the Israelites in the land of Canaan or the land of Israel if they're already there? If they're already in Israel and they're the descendants of Togarmah, then how come in Ezekiel 38 it says that we're going to go to the land of unwalled villages, to them that dwell in safety and rest? If they're already there, they don't have to go nowhere. They're already there. And you can't have the children of Togarmah fighting themselves, because if you can't be the child of Togarmah and the child of Jacob, you can't be the child of Togarmah and the child of Ishmael, you can't be the child of Togarmah and the child of the Philistines or the child of Mitzrayim. So the Arabs got to choose on who they belong to. Either you are an Ishmaelite because you're Arab, either you're a Philistine because you're Palestinian, either you're a Phoenician Canaanite because you're a Lebanese person, Arab, either you're an Egyptian or a Puttite because you're an Arab living in Egypt or Put, or you go by your true ancestry and your DNA and you're a Turk, you're children of Japhet. So when I look at these things, I say to myself, look, I said there's a lot of things that do not add up. When we look at genealogy, we look at who's who, who's where, who's in Israel, who's in the land of Canaan, or who's in Sub-Saharan Africa. And to me, when I look at all the genealogies of the Table of Nations and who's who, and where is the so-called land, and all the characteristics of the land, and other scientific and extra biblical facts, I now believe, because I didn't always believe this. I, like a couple of years ago, I believe in my books, you will see that Ron must have believed something different years ago, and I did. But the Most High started to open my eyes and started to reveal to me a lot of things, especially when I got to the continent. And when I got to the continent in Ghana, when I went to South Africa, when I was in Swaziland, talking to a Swazi elder, and he was telling me all the ancient traditions and customs that they used to do. I was like, man, I said, this is straight out the Bible. And, even when I talked to them about the little black people that's there in their land and how they live near the mountains and in the forest and stuff like that nature, I said, man, I got to start rethinking so many things, because I'm seeing with my eyes exactly everything the land of Canaan is described in the Bible in Africa. So that's how I'm at right now. And I know people think I'm crazy, but I'm going to stand on what I believe in right now.
No, you're not crazy, brother Rod. But like I said, knowledge is increasing, and we are renewed and refreshed every day. So, here, let me just
Sarah, one thing
yeah.
I want to touch is that just like in many Bantu languages, even in West Africa, you can see a lot of the Hebrew in the Bantu or African languages, not just the lexicon being word for word, but the morphology and syntax and the meaning of the word and how it relates to the Bible. But in addition to that, when you look at some of the oldest um, dialects that people will say is in Africa, such as Swahili and the Kikongo language, the only place in the world where you see one country that has people that speak Kiswahili and Kikongo is in the DRC. And in the DRC, if you research Lingala and the Kikongo language in Swahili, you will see hundreds of words that, in regards to the lexicon, you will find almost an identical match to what you see in the Hebrew Strong's lexicon with the Swahili language and the Kikongo language. And when I found this out, I started scratching my head like, wait a minute, why is Swahili and the Kikongo language has so many words that are almost identical to the modern Hebrew lexicon? And I started to ask these questions. Well, did the Arabs have anything to do with it? And by talking to a lot of Bantu people, I said, no, no, the Arabs ain't had nothing to do with this because this was already a people that were Shemitic and they had it in their language. It's just that some of the languages were influenced by, I believe, Hamitic tribes. And over time, things change, but ultimately, the root meaning of words still retains the element of the biblical story and who the people are that are speaking this indigenous language. And that tells that we're the Israelites. You do it all the time in your teachings of like Adam and Eve and Sinai and different things in your teachings on YouTube.
Yeah, exactly. And even when you mentioned Jaira being Yire, um, we actually just did that in our Bibles, in our Eve Bible study class. And it does mean blessed. It means blessed, blessed. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. So here's another question from Yama. Please, one question. She always says, please, one question. All right. Okay. We know that the Bamileke are Bantu and that they have haplogroup E1B1A, like the Yoruba, the Igbos, and the Eves. Can we then say that the Yorubas, Igbos, and Eves are also Bantus?
Well, the word Bantu is just a term used in Central and Eastern and Southern Africa for the people, because Muntu means a person. Just like you will see Basoto, Bamabuti, Bakongo, Bakamba, or Akamba, and that just you have plural and you have singular, and the ba means basically like a plural or the people of. So the Bantu people, there was never a man named Bantu that had children called the Bantu people or the Bantu people. The Bantu word is a word that's mainly used in East Africa, South Africa, and Central Africa. But the thing you have to look at is that do the Bantu people in Central, East, and South Africa have the same DNA as West Africans? And the answer is yes. The answer is yes. So if you want to use that term Bantu, you can. But at the end of the day, even if they don't use it, we still have to understand that the Igbo, that the Yoruba, that the Ebe, the Fan, the Ga, the Mandinka, just like those in Zulu and Kikuyu, Maru, and Embo, they have the same Y DNA, E1B1A. meaning that they share the same ancestral forefather, Jacob. So I would say that they're all the Israelites. They're all related to the ancient Israelites. You don't have to use the word Bantu unless you're in Central, East, or South Africa. But we need to start really honing in on our identity as Israelites. We could say we're African, we could say we're Bantu, but at the end of the day, like I keep saying, there was never a man named Africa that had children called Africans. Even when you look at the book of YAHsara, it says the king of Africa fighting against Zepho and these other people. I'm like, wait a minute, who's the king of Africa? Like the word Africa, is that a Shemitic word? Is that a Hamitic word? Who put that word in there? But it's in the book of YAHsara, which was a book written in the 16, 17, 1800s, written in Latin and Greek. But we think the book of YAHsara that we read today is the original book of YAHsara that Joshua quoted. But in the book of YAHsara, it says the king of Africa. Like what? What are we talking about? It was a king of all of Africa, or are they talking about North Africa? So all these terms that we have to this day are not, in my opinion, older than our ancestral forefather, Yakub, or whatever you want to call his name in your dialect. It could be Simba, in Simba and the Kikongo is the same word for Jacob. But Simba in I think Swahili is lion. So we just have to understand we're Israelites. You can say broad
Mhm.
Bantu, that's fine, but we're really at the end of the day Israelites.
We the ever speaking people, we believe that our collective name is ever, and that's simply because the Abraham was referred to as an ever, as a Hebrew, and the word ever is what the word Hebrew was coined out of, and we know that Abraham's ancestor was also known as what is popularly pronounced Eber. So we strongly believe that ever is the our collective name if we should be referred to as Hebrews. Um, Portuguese, Angolan, Haitian, American Israelite says, question, please, family, where is the Jordan River? And before you answer, brother Portuguese, can you reach out to me? I just started a page on Facebook in Portuguese to share this information in Portuguese. But I need somebody who actually speaks Portuguese. That is, if you do, to help me with this page. So because we know that history tells us that the people who were initially taken from West Africa were taken to Brazil. So I would love, and if there's any other Portuguese speaking person in the Brazilian Portuguese speaking person in the chat, reach out to me at evelanguageclass@gmail.com and I'll type it. Okay. All right, brother Ron, can you I also want to know where Jerusalem is, if you know. I'm not sure if you know yet, but where you would think that Jerusalem is if it's in Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa, and he wants to know where the Jordan River is.
We all want to know these things, just like we want to know, did the Israelites cross the Red Sea or did they cross the Nile River? Because in the Hebrew, it's not Yam Adam, it's Yam Suf, and we know that Suf means reeds, and like a reed basket. Moses was on a reed basket. There's no reeds along the Red Sea, none at all. So then the story now is okay. They crossed the Nile River, and the boundaries that we may read that may say Red Sea, it may say the Nile, depending on what you're reading. Now you're confused on what is what because of what's in the Bible. Just like the word Euphrates is a Greek word, but it's in our English Bible. They don't use the word Parat, they use the word Euphrates in our English Bible. But when we look at the word Jordan, we have to say, okay, well, where does the word Jordan come from? Is it an English word? Is it a Shemitic word? And these landmarks, these landmarks, I like to let people know that when you look at Mount Zion, that's supposed to be the highest of all mountains. Mount Zion is not a mountain in Israel. Mount Olives is not a mountain in Israel. Mount Megiddo is not a mountain in Israel. The lands the Bible say is a forest are not forested in Israel. When you look at the Jordan River, it's significant because the Israelites crossed over the Jordan River to get to the land of Canaan in the Bible. Well, you have different tribes that will describe certain rivers as the River Jordan, but they don't call it the River Jordan. Such as I think the Igbos have a tradition that they crossed over the Niger River, and that in the middle of the Niger River, they put those 12 stones in the middle of the Niger River for each of the 12 tribes, and it's something that Joshua instructed the Israelites or the Levites to do when they were crossing the Jordan River. But this is something that the Igbos will say is in the Niger River, which goes through the Niger Delta in Nigeria. Now you have other tribes that will say that it's another river in Africa, depending on if their location is in South Africa or the Congo or East Africa. It will mention what they believe is the Jordan River, or what mountain is Mount Zion, what mountain is the Mount Gilgal, or Mount Sinai. Everybody has their stories and their um, history of what they believe these biblical landmarks are. But we have to understand that just like I break down Mount Zion and Mount uh, Olives and Mount Megiddo and the Red Sea and all these different things, then in the same way we can look at Jerusalem. And Jerusalem, it says clearly that Jerusalem is encircled by mountains. It's surrounded on all sides. But it doesn't say all sides. It says that it's encircled. It's encircled like a circuit, and a circuit is a loop. So if Jerusalem is encircled by mountains, and in the Bible it describes the high mountains of Israel, the elevated high mountains, then where in the world today? And Jerusalem means a land that Yah provides peace, a territory or domain of peace to his people. Where in the world do we see a land or a territory that is surrounded by mountains? And the only place you can see this is in a place where the tectonic plates and rifts and what they call cratons, Craton, formulated uh, hundreds and thousands of years ago, and that is in the African Great Lakes region. So when you look at Lake Victoria and you look at the countries that border Lake Victoria, Uganda, Kenya, you got Tanzania below, Zambia off to the southwest, and you got the Congo to the west. When we look at the mountain ranges that are in Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, Congo, or DRC, you will see that the cratons, what they call these belts. A belt is a mountain range. So when they say let's say they call it the Dalton Belt. The Dalton Belt is simply a range of mountains that they call the Dalton Belt, and these Dalton belts can form along cratons in the tectonic plate, and the cratons and the shift of the tectonic plates eventually cause valleys like the East and West African Rift Valley. And when you research the formation of volcanoes and rivers and lakes, you'll see that these are also how rivers and lakes are formed, and mountains and hills. So in Central Africa, you'll see all these hills and these gigantic tall mountains. Some of them are volcanic, some of them are not. And one of the things you could also test is that the high elevation part of the land, if you were to do a flood map, and I talk about this in the movie, I showed this in the movie Hebrews to Negroes 3, Sound the Alarm, Volume 2. If you do a flood map, and let's say the whole world experiences another Noah's Ark flood, and the water just keeps rising and rising and rising and rising and rising from uh, 200 meters to 300 to 500 to 1,000 to 1,500 to 2,000 meters, you will see that if the water was to rise that and keep going, that the only place on Africa that would remain above water because of the mountains, obviously, is it's arranged in a circle. It's arranged in a circle, and I had this in the movie Hebrews to Negroes 3, Sound the Alarm, Volume 2 on H2N TV. And it you when you see the flood water start to go up, you'll see that there's still a lighted area that is in a circle formation, like a circuit, and it's exactly in that Central African region. The only other high point in Africa that is that's above, I think, 2,000 meters, are in Ethiopia and I think Drakensberg Mountain in Lesotho or South Africa. But aside from these two areas, there is a circle. There's a circle like a belt. Mountains ranges called belts that are arranged in a circle around Lake Victoria. And this is where you will actually see a circle of mountains. Only place in Africa you'll see this. And did you know that the movie Wakanda, the movie Wakanda, the land of Wakanda is divided into different regions. Um, you have Naganda, Niganda. You have Azania, Azania. You have Canaan, and all these territories in the kingdom of Wakanda are in your modern day Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, and the DRC. They even have in Wakanda Lake Kivu, and Lake Kivu sits on the border of Rwanda and the DRC. So, and the Nile flows from the north to the south into Lake Albert. It's called the Albertine Nile. So the Nile flows into Lake Victoria, but it also flows into Lake Albert. Lake Albert flows into Lake Edward. Lake Edward flows into Lake Kivu. Lake Kivu flows into Lake Tanganyika. And Lake Tanganyika has streams that flow into the Congo River. And the Congo River has tributaries, you'll see that connects into Burundi, Rwanda, and even some people even say the Rwenzori Mountains has water that comes off the mountains and comes down, connecting to these tributaries that also feed these bodies of water that ultimately is the cause of the flooding of the Nile River, because the Nile River used to flood and then recede. And they said that the flooding of the Nile River came from the water source that began the Nile in Central Africa, and some people might say the Congo, Uganda, Burundi area. So, so that's when I look at Jerusalem. And Jerusalem to me means a place that Yah will provide peace. When you really look at these areas, it's the mountains provide a natural boundary and almost like a wall of protection from outside people that can't access these areas unless they have a motorbike or they have a guide or they're walking on foot, because some of these areas in Africa you cannot access them with your modern day vehicles. There's no roads like a highway and a freeway to get into these areas. You have to either fly in or use a helicopter or use a motorbike or have like a group of people with a guide take you into these areas, because there's so many hills, there's so many mountains. The terrain is a lot. It's like a jungle. And so when you look at these things, but the people that are living in these areas, they're living and they're surviving on just the land. They got mountain farms that they have livestock. They get milk, they get cheese, they growing vegetables. They have all the lakes that's in that area, so they can fish. They can get fish. They can raise chickens. So essentially within this mountain range region of the Great Lakes, you can fish. You can have poultry, chickens, and eggs. You can have meat, livestock, eating, grazing on the mountains and in the plains and the savannas, and you can have fruits and vegetables in this area. So you have everything you need, including the rain from the heavens, because there's always clouds in these tropical areas along the equator. And because of the way that the earth is sitting in that area, you can easily get water from the borehole. But the water table in Central Africa is so high that when it rains, you'll see that a lot of times you look at the news, when it rains in the Congo and Uganda and Cameroon, it floods. Zambia, the wells, there'll be flooding. There'll be flooding in these countries because the water table is relatively high, because there's water below and it rains all the time. So you got water above, water below. You got everything that the land of Canaan tells you it has: the honey, the milk. So, I see all these things in sub-Saharan Africa, but not in Israel.
Okay, thank you so much. You know, when I read Jubilees 8, it makes me see that, well, it tells us that um, Shem has his portion, right? And Shem's portion is in the center of the earth. Don't you think that that means that we, as the descendants of the ancient Israelites, our portion, the greater part of our portion, is in Shem's portion? And whatever Yah has given to Abraham, then which went on to Isaac and Jacob, that's in addition to what we have in Shem's portion. What do you think about that?
Well, I had a lady. She's Ethiopian. She speaks Amharic in another language, and she got her Book of Jubilees, the Ethiopic version, and she read the chapter where it talks about Ham's sons and them casting lots and dividing their land for their people. And I said, read to me what it says about Canaan and his portion. And she read it. And she says, Ron, according to what I'm reading, that the land of Canaan is south of Egypt and Sudan. And it extends beyond the volcanic mountains, they call the mountains of fire. It extends beyond the Garden of Eden. It extends beyond the great waterfalls, and as to the south, and to where I think it says the horizon meets the end of the earth. And we all know that the best way to see the horizon is to go to the tip of South Africa, or it's the tip of anywhere, and you'll see the horizon separating the sky and the ocean. But she said that it also extends not only south to the tip of South Africa, but it extends to the west, to the end of the Atlantic Ocean, to West Africa, like where Senegal, Gambia is at. And she said that it also seems to extend upward to areas that the children of Put in Mitzrayim did not have in their portion. So She said essentially the land, when she read it in her language, in her book written in the Ethiopic language, not English. She says our book is more authentic than what you guys got off the internet, or what somebody might have printed. And she says that the land of Canaan is the largest land that the Ham's sons got. And she says that the land of Canaan is the best piece of land, in my opinion, of Africa, because it extends all the way down to the southern part of Africa, where everything is plush. Because in Egypt and in Libya and even in North Sudan, it's the desert. And one of the reasons why the Bantu people say that they left Egypt was because of oppression, but also because of the lack of rain, the drought, the famine, the lack of certain things, and they just wanted to leave Egypt and find a place that had more, more abundance in the land, a fat, large, abundant land. And this is exactly the land that the Most High chose for them to have. And He led them, but Moses, south into the best land on planet Earth. They had all the mineral resources. It had all the things they needed to survive and live and eat and sustain themselves on. And this land was not in Saudi Arabia. It was not in Sinai Peninsula. It was not in Jordan. It was not in Israel. And when you look at the center of the earth or the center of the world, the equator is a known fact that the equator is not an arbitrary line. It's not a made-up line. The equator is exactly running through half of the earth, and it does cut through Uganda and the Congo. This is a scientific fact that the equator does run through the Congo, and the meridian arbitrary line that the Europeans created. They created this line many times and had it dividing certain areas, separating the east and the west half of the globe, or the earth. And many people believe, the ancients or the ancient Congo scholars, that the navel and the center of the earth is in the Congo. That's why they call it Catiopa. Catiopa is what from Kephas. He's a Bukongo, and the word Catiopa means the center, the navel, the umbilicus. And from the word Catiopa, we see in the early ancient Greek maps of Africa that the territory of Ethiopia was in Central Africa. It was not in where we see it today, where we used to see Abyssinia. So the ancient land of Ethiopia was in Central Africa, where they had the Greeks defining the word Ethiopia based on the Hebrew or the Bantu word Katiopa, which means the navel or the center. So I think that when we look at these things, the mountains, the center, the navel of the earth, the well-watered land, all these things the Bible talks about, from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, the Most High's eyes are going to be upon it. All the livestock that the Israelites had to slaughter every year for the Passover and for other religious rites and ceremonial rites for atonement of sins and different things. The Israelites had to have all these livestock, and to be able to kill these livestock every year for hundreds of years, and they had to do this regularly as a requirement. It means that the livestock that they had to have something to graze on. And we look at Israel today. Israel is a barren desert land, and they have to actually import grain and feed and livestock. So not only are they importing livestock to feed the meat requirements of the people of Israel that want to eat meat, but in addition to that, they have to import feed and grain, because there's not enough land for the livestock to even graze to be fed. So, these kind of things, in addition to them pumping seawater from the Mediterranean Sea and putting it to the Sea of Galilee, so the Sea of Galilee can stay afloat. Even them putting fish into the Sea of Galilee, so the Sea of Galilee is not devoid of fish. All these things that we see, and look at this thing. Jerusalem and Judea is the southern half of Israel. The southern half of Israel receives the least rainfall. So how can you go a whole year and not even get 10 inches of rain? A whole year. 10 inches, no, not even 10 inches of rain. So this is the reason why the mountains, or the so-called mounds or hills in Israel, are straight rock. The mountains in Israel do not look like the mountains in the Congo or Cameroon or Uganda. Does not look like a Garden of Eden in Israel. The Garden of Eden type of biodiversity and ecological systems and all the things that you would think would be in an area where these four rivers came out of, we would think that water is life. If water is life and water brings forth life, we all civilizations have to be situated along a major river source or lake. Then if the Garden of Eden and the four rivers come out of the river of life, then where on the planet Earth do we see the most greenest area using satellite imagery, Google Earth? It's not in Iraq, it's not in Iran, it's not in Israel, it's not in Saudi Arabia. If you look at satellite imagery or Google Earth from the sky, you will see that it's in central tropical Africa. It's the most darkest, greenest area in Africa because the north is a desert. In the south also sort of has a deserty landscape to it when you get to the western part of Botswana and Namibia. But ultimately, when you get to the middle of the African continent, you'll see that it's the most densely forested grassland area from the satellite images, and you'll see that this land has the highest elevation and it has the majority of all the lakes, rivers, valleys, mountains, and hills smack dab in that Central African region.
All right. Well, wouldn't you say that the reason why modern Israel is the way it is, being like so arid and not having any life in the land, is because of the curses.
No.
Because even with, well, hear this.
Go ahead.
When I grew up, I partially grew up in Mali. I grew up in Ghana, Togo, and Mali. And when I was growing up and going to school in Mali, I went to a normal, regular, um, well, it was an international school, but they taught Malian history. And they taught us that the Sahara was once green. It was a green Sahara. It had all of these animals and vegetation that we would see in Sub-Saharan Africa today, but they're no longer there because the land has been depleted for of all of its riches in some sense. And also, I was talking to Sister Only Love this morning, and she was also telling me how, according to some historical sources, the Sahara became like that also because of wars. Because in warfare, they do so much against the land, against the fruitfulness of the land. Wouldn't you say that that is, considering the land that is in the so-called Middle East today, with all its histories of invasion, all its histories of war? In fact, there's also historical documentation of when there was salt deliberately poured on the land, on acres and acres of the land, just for the purpose of destroying the land. So wouldn't you say that that would be one of the reasons, in addition to scripture letting us know that the land will be desolate? I know I've heard your argument about the desolation, but you can answer.
Well, when you look at these things, we have to remember that roughly close to 500 years ago, or 430 or whatever, we had slavery. Now, if you look at some of the earliest records of the Congo Kingdom, it goes back to the 1300s. That's 700 years ago. If you go back to the beginning of Islam, that's 1400 years ago. If you go back to the Ethiopian Jews and their language and the stuff that they know, that's going back to now over 2,300 years ago, or even longer than that, because the Ethiopian Jews that speak Ge'ez, the Ge'ez language is not an evolution from Greek. It existed before Greek even existed. It existed before Greek even existed. But the Ethiopian Jews are in Ethiopia right now, where they were until a lot of them got shipped to Israel. And why were they in Ethiopia? Why were they in Ethiopia? And why do some of the Ethiopian Jews have the Y DNA E1B1, the predecessor of E1B1A? And some of them actually have E1B1A as well as E1B1B. And they still share some of the maternal DNA haplogroups that are seen in Bantu people, although they're in that region of the world. We have to look at that if we're saying that these climate change happened in the last 2,000 or 1,000 years, that's kind of hard to believe that just 1,000 years ago that something happened in Israel that created it to be a barren desert dry land. Even if you go back to 2,000 years ago, when we see about the Romans and the Greeks and all this sort of stuff, we have to ask ourselves, in where in history is it recorded that either there was a massive die-off of all these animals and that the mountains of Israel all became barren, dry rocks, and all the forest lands that Israel's supposed to have, the forest of the Israel, all these trees that made up this forested land in Israel, they all disappeared. They're all gone. Was there some massive fire or meteors that came out the sky that destroyed all these forests? The forest of Ephraim and Manasseh, the forest of Bethlehem, and all these wilderness areas in the Bible that speaks of what happened to cause all of these trees and mountains and lands to lose their vegetation and lose the animals. And then what happened to the mountains? Where the mountains go? Where's Mount Zion at?
It's part of the
Where's Mount Olive?
curses.
How is the curses going to make a mountain disappear?
Oh,
How is
y'all
the
notice
curse?
how to level mountains and
Okay,
silly
all right.
valleys.
Here's the other thing. Here's the other thing. Either there was some cataclysmic apocalyptic event that eliminated all these animals, because these animals that is listed in the Bible, they're still alive to this day, and they're in Africa. So why did these animals in Africa has had its fair share of invasions and wars, and I'm sure famines and droughts. So we had to ask ourselves, okay, are we saying that war caused this? Okay, if we say that disobedience caused this, the curses of Israel caused this, then something mysterical or magical happened, that the curses of Israel caused all these animals to disappear. Because how else would these animals disappear unless there was some cataclysmic dinosaur extinction level event that will cause these animals to either all die off, the mountains to start turning all rock and barren, the grasslands and the forest lands, all these things the Bible speaks of. Now it's all devoid like a desert. So where in history did somebody record that in the year 276 AD that we saw rhinos, elephants, ostriches, leopards, lions, hyenas, crocodiles, all these animals started to leave. They started to like migrate into Egypt because they had in order to get to Sub-Saharan Africa, they would have to migrate and they would have to go into the Sinai Peninsula and then to Egypt. And then while they were walking in Egypt, they would have to follow the Nile River south. So all these people that was the Greeks and the Romans and the Egyptians and the Nubians and the Cushites were just standing around saying, why are these animals going south? What are they doing? Where are they leaving? Where are they coming from? Nobody jotted this down. But yet we see all these animals in Sub-Saharan Africa amongst who? The Israelites. And the crazy thing is that a lot of these animals that are mentioned in the Bible, like giraffes and elephants, rhinos, You say, well, okay, well, if they all died, then where are the skeletons at? Where are the skeletons at? Like in the Greek Septuagint, it mentions giraffe. It says that when you get into the land of Canaan, these are the animals you can eat. These are the animals you cannot eat. And one of those animals in the Greek Septuagint, before we even had the English or the Latin Vulgate, is the camel or pard, which is a giraffe in the Greek language. So where are all the giraffe skeletons in the land of Israel if they all died off? They should be in the ground somewhere. Where are all the rhinos that died off? We see the word unicorn. Okay, you guys changed it. You guys are slick. You guys tricked us. Like tricks us for kids. We're not kids though. We know what you did. So where are all the rhino skeletons in the land of Israel? It's not there. And where are the crocodiles at? It says the word crocodile is in Leviticus 11:30. It's in the book of Genesis, but it's also in the book of the law, Leviticus. Why is it in the book of the law if there was no crocodiles in Israel right now? Where are the crocodiles living in Israel? Are they living in the Sea of Galilee? Are the crocodiles in the Jordan River? Where are they at? But the crocodiles are in Africa. And so when we look at a lot of these things, we have to start using our brain and start to say, okay, well, animals, you have predators and you have those that are prey. You have carnivores and you got herbivores. And why would a herbivore or a carnivore go extinct? Why? And you can't say that it's because of people killing. You can say, well, maybe the Romans and the Greeks and the Arabs, they came and they killed all the animals. They just went on a killing spree, killing all these animals. For what? Why would they do that? They said, okay, well, maybe the Romans and the Greeks and the Arabs, they set fire to all the forest and all the grasslands and all the vegetation that was on the mountains of Israel. The mountains of Israel, they laid fire to it and they burned it all down. Because you can't say that a war caused all the mountains of Israel to be barren rocks when the Bible says that the mountains of Israel is going to feed us, man and beast. We're going to eat off the fruit and the vegetation of the mountains of Israel, and we're going to eat and lie down. It says this in the Bible. And it says that the mountains of Israel are high mountains, high mountains. Most of the mountains in Israel are not even classified under the UK definition of a mountain because they're no more than 600 meters. So a lot of the mountains in Israel barely make the definition of a UK mountain. So when you look at the true classification of mountains based on Asia and Africa, these mountains are 1,000 meters and higher. So there's a lot of things that just can't be explained by the curses of Israel, because we know that during the time that the Israelites were in Israel, that there were good kings, there were bad kings. They were allowed to come back to the land under the Persian rule. So if we want to go with the book of Maccabees, then we still see, okay, they're still in the land and they're doing something. They got high priests. So when exactly did this disobedience cause the land to go barren desert? And this is what many people cannot explain. By see his thing.
I know we have to let you go. Your tribe
Yeah,
has taken over the the live. Mine,
yeah,
mine are trying to do the same too. I would love to
yes.
continue discussing this, Ron, but I respect your time. Thank you so much for all that you're doing, and thank you for tirelessly working for the awakening. Hi, guys. You all are so beautiful. And may Yah bless you.
Okay.
And you have a gap. I have a gap too. Look at mine. See?
Yeah. Yeah.
And your dad has one too. All
Yes,
right.
I
Yeah.
do.
So thank you. Thank you so much for all that you're doing. May Yah bless you and keep you. And I pray that all that you do, that you are even more successful than you are today. You've got those people shaking in their boots. And I know I saw your broadcast on how, they They try to take you to court over the movies in South Africa to get it removed and everything, but all that was for naught. And that shows that Yah is still backing you and backing all of us in this awakening, because it's the doing of Yah. And as I always say, either you get with what Yah's doing or you get out of the way, because he's going to move you if you don't move. You know. So thank you, and thank all the audience for being here. Thank you for your support. Please support Brother Ron. He is, even though he spent all this time with us, he has a family to feed. So brothers and sisters, let's put our words into action, and let's support Brother Ron. You can connect with him at Hebrews to Negro. What is your email? I put it in the chat earlier.
It's Hebrews to Negroes at yahoo.com.
Okay. Connect with him there so that he can tell you how you can support him. So please support him. This brother is working day and night for us as a people, whether we're in America, whether we're in Europe or Asia, whether we're in Africa. He is working for us. So bless him, and shalom, selomi, salama to everyone.
Shalom, shalom.